Secret Rogue is a decent bring this week, because even though I think the consensus is pretty unanimously now that Secret Rogue is a worse deck at the moment, that bump in win rate against Paladin can really help you. If you're going for a priest ban strategy, it can just give you a really nice counter queue against what is otherwise a bit of a jack of all trades in terms of its win rates with the N'Zoth Paladin. But for Hi3 to get things rolling, Hand of Adal, again, it's one of those cards that I always look at as a strong early game option. But I think the thing I'm realizing more and more about this N'Zoth Paladin is that in turns like 1 through 3, it's very often not just a straight curve deck where you try and spend all your mana on minions.
It's true. I think the hands that let you do that are very specific, because the only really good one drop in the deck is Knight of Anointment, and at that point it's just a 1-mana 1/1. You don't often want to start Safety Inspector unless you're specifically shuffling back a secret, a bad card, to draw something else. And so the deck actually gets rolling, mainly in my opinion, by getting early Sword of the Fallen into Northwatch Commander to keep the value going, make sure that you're able to draw into that late game without falling behind on board. And the Red Scale fulfills a similar purpose in terms of it being a decent minion on curve that also draws you a card.
Very respectable hand coming together now, though, for Hi3. His early curve sorted, especially as it looks like this is going to be a man crick on this turn, which Hi3 could happily gobble up with the Hand of Adal. And then just playing better statted things than Glory every turn with Kazakus, 5-cost Golem, Hammer of the Naru. He doesn't have to get fancy, he's just doing stronger stuff.
Yeah, and the health on the Murloc is pretty big here because Glory simply can't just dagger it down. He does have options to clear it with the Prize Plunderers. He can also play like the Guardian Og Merchant on his own Foxy. And then there's a world where even if this is Galloping Savior, he's able to because of the Shadow stuff. Or just
and I think
other Plunder and the Dagger.
Yeah, I think this is what he's going for here, is just giving himself the ability to clear it. Because as long as he knows it's not Oh My Yogg, he will very happily be able to go for Secret Passage next turn. And this feeds into what I was saying, right? It's going wide on the board, and this is the kind of board that Paladin struggles to deal with. The best they can do is put forward their own threat in the way, which on this turn looks like it kind of has to be Kazakus.
Yeah, it feels bad because it's already dead just to the Divine Shield on the Foxy, but there are some 5-cost golems that can maybe pull him back. The deal 3 to 2 enemy minions is exactly what Hi3 was looking for. You'd have to imagine, like, ideally Rush on the first keyword, but we'll get information on that a little bit later. Glory gonna rip the passage because he's seen no secrets.
I'm glad he didn't do what I was just about to suggest, because I was going to say you could step the Foxy, play Vanessa, and then play Kazakus, but Gabby taught me that that does not work because Kazakus is still in your own deck. So thanks, Gab, for pulling me out of that particular jam.
Nice pun there, a Gab jam.
Thanks. Rigfeg in.
It's a pretty cool pickup, isn't it? Because he's clearing the Kazakus this turn. If Hi3 is going to send any damage, it's going to be into a minion. There's no way he can just swing Sword of the Fallen face, stare down with all these 1-health guys. So this is a great spot for Glory, so far ahead.
Yeah, it's looking good. Rush and deal 3 to all minions does feel like it will do a very good job. You would kind of be expecting Mirror Entity here, to be fair, because it's a very orchestrated turn. Your opponent knows that you are going to play a 5/5 of some description on this turn. But Glory was, of course, not given that option, and so Hi3 correctly just plays it down. Now, in terms of the trades, I think it's the Prize Plunderer. It's the one that I'd be most afraid of.
It would be, but from Hi3's perspective, this could still also be Oasis ally.
True.
Glory, which really makes him not want to trade because he's very interested in going for Hammer next turn, get the 6/6 online, and be able to swing. But it feels like for Hi3, he just cannot afford to play around anything, right? He's also thinking about rigged fair game, and in that world, you fall way too far behind if you don't take any trades. So I think I'd be in favor of taking that risk of it being Oasis ally and just saying, if you have it, Glory, well played. I do agree.
And he, calls his bluff, and it does work out very nicely for him. Now, Hammer of the Naru next turn. Going to be able to do a very, very nice job of cleaning this up, but Glory is left with some pretty strong options of his own. Obviously, he could get his own Golem with Vanessa, even if he can't play it this turn. That sounds like a pretty powerful option to start swinging back the board once Hi3 does develop his big threats.
And this Golem has no condition for its battle cry to go. So that is very powerful indeed. Manages to fit in the Swindle, Brain Freeze for free. Glory thoroughly in the driver's seat, even though he's pushing just a little bit of chip damage every turn. That's really all you need, as long as you don't lose the board control. In terms of swing potential from Hi3, there's little he can do without his own Kazakas. We're talking Broomstick, which is the only one of in his deck. And he also hasn't played First Day of School to really have good minions to rush with.
That's true. Glory is just in exactly the position you want to be in as Rogue. You have a board, your opponent plays a minion, and then you use all your resources to clear that minion and push all the damage face. Alexstrasza in hand, Wicked Stabs in deck. It's going to be very, very difficult for Hi3 to survive this onslaught, especially as for Glory here. I mean, if he wanted to, just as an option, he could even go Golem, Tenwu Golem to clear it off instantly without even having to deal with rushing anything in. Not to say that that is necessarily the play, but he has the option to keep all his minions intact here.
Yeah, it's just too good for Glory. He's like, oh, I have to float some mana this turn. Big deal. I think he holds on to Tenwu for just like Janda's Tenwu if he needs to next turn. I don't think he'll actually have the board space, but he's thinking, what's the one way I lose here? It's Broomstick. So he's okay with taking the 6 damage. There's not that much burst outside of Alex from the Paladin. Keeps the 5/5 on board and has the refill in case of the worst scenario, which is not even in Hi3's hand.
And this is just a very kind of instructive and thematic pan out of how you expect this matchup to go. Glory is just putting a guy on the board each turn, whereas Glory as the Rogue is basically doing a quadruple backflip every turn and throwing 1,000,000 cards on the board, clearing everything Hi3 does. There's nothing he could do. As you perfectly highlighted, it's the Broom as the one bit of flexibility he has in his deck, because as it currently stands, these individual minions, like a 6/6 for 6 mana, even with Taunt, doesn't even scratch this.
Yeah, and Hi3 was forced to play the taunt, because he was just kind of dying to Wicked Stabs or things from One Thief. Couldn't afford to go for the Sky Stalker, which in turn makes N'Zoth a little bit worse later if he can even get there. And I don't think he will.
Yeah, Glory obviously thinking about going for double Janda's here. It does proc the Galloping Savior, which is I think why he's pausing here. Do you want to attack first, just to get the damage through after you play your extra Janda's?
I think he will. Still able to do that as long as he doesn't play the Janda's first.
What makes something real?
This board just cannot be dealt with, even if there... Oh, another Wrath Blacksmith. Even if there is a Broomstick for Hi3, there's just not enough minions, and the minions aren't big enough to deal with everything here.
Yeah, trying to think if there's any kind of a burn plan open to him, but I mean, quite clearly, even with Alexstrasza in hand, he's not even going to get to turn 9 to even be able to play it. Not that it would even deal lethal once it gets there. It's looking like lights out for Hi3.
Yeah, I don't think Knight of Anointment pulls anything relevant at this point. Hand of Adal into Broomstick. You can rush the Knight and I guess a hero power minion, but it's really, really bad. Even if you're able to clear the 2 illusion minions, you're floating a lot of mana. You don't want to overwrite the hammer with Sword of the Fallen. There's just no options.
And what this really comes down to is a really interesting facet of play from Glory, which is one of the big criticisms I had of people playing against Secret Paladin a few weeks ago was they triggered secrets too liberally. They were very happy to just proc them and not even really think about it and just play their cards however they wanted. Whereas now I think players have got a lot better at not proccing secrets when it's good. But Glory's good play here was the fact that he did go for apologies, sorry, proccing the Galloping Savior, which just allowed him to get an extra 2/1 on the board. He didn't even really care about the battle cry of the prize plunder. It just allowed him to go wide on the board, and then as soon as he did that on turn 4, he was ahead for the rest of the game. There was just nothing Hi3 could do.
That's right. I mean, Prize Plunder, you might think, oh, this is really important because it's a tool to get rid of the Carousel Griffin a bit later on, but played down super early, it is just pushing 2 damage every turn, gaining the tempo from removing that secret, which would have been a big pain for Glory later on if he had left it up. And it's just difficult for Paladin to get rid of, even if they have Sword of the Fallen. If you play 2 of them at the same turn, alongside Foxy, alongside Guardian Aug Merchant, it is just a zoo game plan that Paladin cannot keep up with. And for Glory, the spot of copying the Golem off of Vanessa Van Cleef was what really ramped up the pressure and did not give Hi3 any time to search for the broomstick.
Yeah, and I think as well, speaking of that zoo game plan, it's kind of why, even though it's a very subtle difference, I'm kind of on Team Glory as opposed to Team Alutemu here, where I like the double Orc Merchant as opposed to 1 Orc Merchant, 1 Pen Flinger. I know that players have said the Orc Merchant feels a little bit dead in terms of finding a really good target, but for me it doesn't need a really good target. It's a 2-1 that sometimes gives a minion Divine Shield in clutch situations. It's just good enough to go for these very aggressive wide board game plans at the start. It does mean that Hi3 is going to be switching over to the Rush Warrior, a matchup that you were saying a little bit earlier, you were describing, I think, unless I misheard you, as kind of close to a 50-50, even if slightly favored for the Rush Warrior.
Right. That was thinking about Lambi series list. I misspoke, sorry, which did run
Apologies.
N'Zoth. And no, that was my mistake. I didn't specify. I thought Hi3 had the Moonthang N'Zoth version, which is obviously a lot slower, but more powerful in the late game. The streamlined Rush Warrior that we're all used to seeing with the double Tent Thrasher, I think, has a pretty good matchup against Rogue. I struggle to call it great still because every time I see a strong Rogue player, they somehow manage to put together a win condition that you don't necessarily expect, but just the game plan A of the Warrior, which is getting a big conditioning down into big minion after big minion, is traditionally a struggle point for the Rogue. I will say in the early turns though, if the Warrior isn't able to curve out with things like parade leaders or even bumper cars, then the Rogue can potentially get some stuff done with Kazakus and Mankrik.
Yeah, I think the best comparison I can make is imagine the last game, but every minion that Hi3 played has Rush. That's kind of going to be about the way this plays out. Yes, you play slightly less well-statted minions than you will in Paladin, and the buffs are not quite so potent. But the game plan is surprisingly similar. You're going for getting all these minions down. You do have the buff game plan in hand rather than buffing them on board, but you just hope that they're big enough. And the real difference maker being if Rogue is ahead on board, you have all these bumper cars, the riders, Blade Master Samuro, crucially, to clear things up. You have a lot more defensive capabilities. But you're going to need it nice and fast because Glory has got himself a turbo hand here.
Yes, Hi3 also has a great hand in terms of just curving out early to the point where I wondered if Glory was supposed to maybe just coin out Foxy Vanessa, get himself a Gnarg. That is a lot of power. It kind of denies or at least provides him counterplay to just Parade Leader on curve or even Bumper Car. And now, while he has held on to the coin, I think he gets an inferior minion from Vanessa and also not the initiative to trade on board.
Yeah, it just gets axed straight away as the Gnarg comes down, and of course the axe will be able to swing into one of them straight away. So in that case, is there ever a game plan where you allow them to equip the axe and maybe squander it on going face and develop afterwards? Either way, it feels like it's going to be tough for Glory to gain board control.
It just feels all too slow, right? I think he might have to bite the bullet and just develop the 2 minions here in order to make it such that if it's just the axe, at least one of them sticks. But then you're running into territory of like any rush minion from Hi3 is a big punish into Vanessa with only 2 attack. So Glory holding on to the combo a bit longer, but he's going to fall so far behind.
This Gnarg is just so devastating. Every time I see it in action, it's just the threat of it that makes it so tough for Glory. He can't develop anything because he just knows it's going to die. So at this point, we're really looking for Prize Plunderer, Brain Freeze, which is why we're going to see Coin Secret Passage as the best answer he has available. He needs something already.
See Hi3's expression, he's like, oh, he's desperate, he's digging, and he gets whiffs. Wendell can still pull him Brain Freeze or Prize Plunderer. Oh no, that's terrible. Hi3 knows he is so far in the driver's seat, gonna copy the Tent Thrasher. Oh my goodness. He can even fit in the Sky Talon for a discount on the Tent Thrasher.
That's true. That's probably just good, right? You just want to go aggressive here. They don't really have the answers to that.
I was very interested in that, not gonna lie. Because it would have cost 0 and then the 10 Thrasher would have cost 3 by that. Sorry, cost 4, and then you could still play it, spend all your mana. But Hi3 has chosen the Fishy Flyer, which gives him like ways to refill if somehow this is cleared. So I don't hate this. It's still a ton of pressure. It's still winning really hard. And Glory has found some answers. I struggled to call this enough though.
It's the best possible hand he could have gotten off of Secret Passage. I'm not saying it's necessarily good enough, but if ever he was going to get an out, it needed to be specifically these 3 cards, I think. And so it means that he's not just straight up dead on the following turn, as it was looking like it would be before this turn happened. And who knows, maybe with a field contact, double step, Foxy Fraud, he has some pretty powerful draws. I don't want to call this over yet.
Definitely not, but having to have used the coin there and the second passage makes it feel like it's really awkward for Glory to get anything powerful done in the next few turns, unless he can somehow discount this Octobot. But in the meantime, Hi3 has top deck Rakara. Oy, oy, oy.
Rakara is pretty filthy.
It's not mana efficient, but man does she pile on the pressure. Looks like Hi3 is going to hold back on a turn, develops another minion and the Gunarg, so Rakar has potential to get even better next turn and be played alongside the 10th Thrasher, which I don't hate whatsoever.
Wow, he even wants to save the weapon at the expense of 2 health on the Parade Leader. Kind of interesting, but I guess after you've seen a Guardian Orc Merchant already, it's not especially likely that they're going to have a clear that makes the difference between 1 and 3 health.
Nice ordering, I would say, as well, to end with Gunarg. Plays around Vanessa just ever so slightly. I don't think he'd even be sad about giving a Fishy Flyer, but Gunarg feels very useless to Glory here. Everything feels useless indeed. Having to spend mana on hero power this late into the game and leave up a 6-1 is pretty much just conceding at this point.
It's close to it, right? Because he's going to get to the point where he gets down to 8 health, and even if he can survive till turn 8, Alex Straza will close out the job. Again, if Glory has any ray, glimmer of hope, it comes in field contact right now.
Contact into Wand Thief? I don't know.
Yep. Hi3 just had the nuts. It's how it goes sometimes. It's about as bad as the matchup can possibly go, but them's the breaks.
He had the nuts, but Glory had this Foxy Fraud and Vanessa in hand since turn 1, which could have been on board on turn 1. Like, he was clearly valuing the coin a lot, which you can see the reasoning for, right? Because after that, his follow-up would have been Cult Neophyte and just a bunch of Shadow Steps, and then it gets a bit awkward to activate things a little bit later on. The coin is really useful for buffing up your Prize Plunder returns, which often feels like the best way to swing tempo against Warrior. But just the fact that if Hi3 had played any 2-drop without Glory developing first on board, he would fall so far behind, I think warranted the faster start.
You know, I think I agree. I mean, I think on Hi3's side, I did also prefer the Emerald Sky Talon plan, just to go even more aggressive, really force them out of the game as quick as possible. But it's just the classic thing I say about Vanessa, or not really I that say it, just everyone. It's just the 2-3 body for 0 mana that's so broken. With Foxy Fraud and Vanessa, it's insanely powerful just to get that down on turn 1. And I think I agree, that's something that Glory should have explored a little bit more closely. You can't necessarily go into the game plan expecting exactly, 2 mana, 3 mana, 4 mana perfect expenditure over the next few turns. But even then, it was still just a way to get on board a bit more aggressively and could have won him the board in these early turns that he was so sorely lacking.
Yeah, it's really tough to imagine the situations when the game diverges that far away, but you can kind of say that one of those minions can trade into the Parade Leader, the other one gets axed down, but then he's gotten the Neophyte on board by the very next turn. Could very well still have been a loss for Glory, given that he just did not have a good way to activate the Octobot that didn't come off of Secret Passage. So Hi3, with the strong matchup there, gets the counter queue done nice and easy, and now Glory has his pick of OTK Demon Hunter and Druid to go into this Rush Warrior. My first instinct would be to look at the Druid, especially since minions. If it takes that win, it is potentially being cornered by the Rogue, because now I'm just purely in favor of Rogue being favored against
Yeah, I mean, I'm right with you here. I agree completely. But I think that the OTK Demon Hunter, the way I've seen it play against Warrior is that, you know, you do have to get very specific hands to be able to win the game, because you're not going to be clearing their minions for the entire game. You do have to go for a very early combo, I think, to be getting the win. And despite the fact that we saw that a lot in testing when I was on the side of the Warrior, I don't think that in reality that's going to be all too much of a probability, and that going for the Token Druid, setting up for these big turns where you get Glowfly, Soul of the Forest on the same turn, Glowfly, Pride's Fury, a big Gibbling turn. Warrior does really struggle to deal with that. Again, Samuro is the trump card, but they've only got one of them in the deck, and you could very often put up more than one threatening board that Warrior can't answer.
Yeah, we saw this already in each series against Lambie series, where even though he did have the Samuro, the fact that Token Druid can put down Soul of the Forest behind their Glowfly or Gibberling board makes it such that just Samuro is often leaving the same amount of attack, if not even more, on the board. And so Soul of the Forest, I feel, is a really key card in the matchup. And beyond that, sometimes they don't have the Samuro, and you just get there with Glowflies into Arbor Up in classic APAC fashion.
It's a very good win condition. And we see it time and again here in Asia Pacific. It's one of the matchups I saw a couple times when I was piloting Token Druid yesterday. Didn't have the highest amount of success, I will say, against Warrior. I think they just curved out a little too aggressively. But we'll see if the same story is there for Glory, as he's already got himself, I mean, 3 of the cards you keep pretty much every time. It looks really simple. Nature Studies, Fungal Fortunes, and then you start messing around with Gibberlings afterwards.
Yeah, it looks really powerful. Whether or not he's able to get a strong Gibberling turn will, of course, depend on whether he gets cheap spells or mana generation from the Fungal. But even if he doesn't hit the immediate Gibberling curve, as long as he can get to Glowfly reasonably early and then have the Gibberling in his back pocket to follow up, it is fine. For Hi3, that was also a very interesting mulligan, because we talk about how Crab Rider's pretty good in the matchup just to be able to trade down several minions at once. Resizing Pouch picked up for Glory now, also interesting. But I don't fault Hi3 getting rid of the conditioning as well and trying to get more of these early curve minions. Parade Leader into Bumper Card. That's a way to pressure Glory effectively, and also just stick minions that trade well into Glowflies.
Oh yeah, this is premium for Hi3, and of course gives him front-loaded damage with the attack buff on Bumper Car, but then also the ability to clear up afterwards with all these 1/1s. Glory, a lot of the time here, has the ability to go pretty bananas here, actually, with a big Gibberling, adorable Infestation, ending with Resizing Pouch to try and find an Innovate or Glowfly. But he's taking one more setup turn first to go for the ultimate pop-off.
Right, because if he had done that, you're not actually innovating into anything but more souls.
Okay.
If he had gotten Lightning Bloom, kind of the same story. And so I really like the gust away there from Glory. Now he has a very powerful Gibberling turn, which can also fit Arbor Up in it.
Right, it's going to be an interesting turn again, because you could make the argument that you wait one more turn and go Gibberling, Coin, Bloom, or Vate, Bloom, Solar, Arbor to get one massive board. But I think at that point, maybe you are being a little too slow. And so popping off on this turn with some kind of a Soul of the Forest play looks pretty interesting.
Yeah, now that Hi3's put so many minions on board, if Glory does go for Arbor Up instead of Soul of the Forest, I think it ends up being traded unfavorably for Glory. So I much prefer Soul of the Forest here. So Gibberling first, he can Lightning Bloom. And then we could see, I guess Solar Soul feels a little bit overkill, right? So fits in instead and then goes for Soul of the Forest. This is very clean. It's strong against Samuro, strong against the trades on the board. It does leave him overloaded to be able to do anything super powerful next turn, but at least he can dictate the trades.
Yeah, you hope you draw something good next turn, and then turn 6 and 7 is, I mean, it's there in hand. It's Arbor Up into Solar Arbor Up already.
So many
good draw, though.
Interesting options for Hi3. Like, between Crab Rider and spending your mana, I definitely prefer spending your mana. I think the ideal situation for Hi3 is if he gets a cheap minion to play with the Crab Rider from the Athletic Studies, and if he whiffs, he can still play other cards. So I like this start. Another 10th Thrasher is pretty interesting. He'll have a Demon waking up next turn.
Yeah, that's definitely where my head's at. He has a couple of mechs that are fairly likely to stick around as well, depending on how Glory wants to, divide trade hits versus face hits.
Wow, all face.
Wow.
From Hi3, he doesn't really have the option to trade down more than one more layer of minions, and by that point, oh my god, this top. By that point, he's just left Glory with time to do something more significant. You've seen the overload. It's very specific, the hand they need to have to be able to clear this. But Glory can clear this. It's just, what's the ideal way? I think he doesn't want to miss a minion, but there's no way to prevent that from the Arbor up, right?
Yeah, I think you just go Bloom, Arbor up, trade the 2-2 into the 10 Trasher, and then everything else just kind of trades as you'd expect.
Oh, wow. That was the perfect top deck for Glory. He was in so much trouble there against the pressure from Hi3. And Hi3's reaction says it all. Really, you had that exact combo? He did. And
he did.
Now, even if he top decks Samuro, it's not enough.
Yep, Samuro doesn't get there. Obviously, the Sword Eater at the moment does not do enough, especially as well if the weapon's already there in play. ETC with triple rush? Do you ever just get lethal before they can kill you?
Oh, well, that's exactly what Hi3's counting up. If he can stick, or you get 4 rushes next turn, that's 8 damage, and his weapon deals 6 over 2 turns, so it's a little bit short.
Oh. Crab Rider still just gets 2 rush attacks, right? So it equals the same as playing 2 Dark Moon Riders on this turn. There's no way he can get Tent Trasher cheap enough.
What he can do is potentially set up for a minion to stick. It's very unlikely Glory will do that, but from Hi3's perspective, Glory is again overloaded. He's not presenting lethal on board. He is presenting 18. And so you're dead to Pride's Fury, but can he afford to play around it? I guess he can go something like Crab Rider, then Tent Trasher, and then only the Tent Trasher attacks into something. Probably 4-3 by that point.
Yeah, I think no matter what, you are banking on a big blunder by Glory to have any real chance of pulling this one back.
Hi3 going for his best board removal plan instead, which is not going to work out against Solo the Forest. Honestly, it's tough for Hi3. Even if he had gone for my play, I don't think he was winning there because Glory was just going to trade most of those minions, remove the ETC out. Hi3. An Arbor up with Solar Eclipse next turn. So dirty.
Yeah, there is nothing doing here for Hi3. I like that he's paused and thought about the aggro game plan with ETC, but in the end, like even in the best case scenario, as you worked out, it was still 1 damage off lethal, and I don't think there were any top decks that could have changed that around. So if Glory had a completely dead hand, then maybe you would have some kind of a chance. But honestly, there's only so many cards that can be dead in a Druid's hand at this point. It's all card draw buffs or developing boards anyway, so something had to be going right.
Actually stay alive with this play. I was potentially looking at either this with the Runtack trade or the Sword Eater, which puts a taunt on board, but getting the Runtack down early seems better.
So he's alive at 1 because it's +8 in addition to the 5. Oh no, wait, he's just dead. Yeah, never mind. I can't count.
Oh, sorry, yeah, my bad as well. I thought he was alive at 1 too, but it's just too strong from Glory. Hi3 had to take damage from the minions that he traded into with the weapon, causing that to just be lethal on the spot. It was a good setup from Hi3. He had the best possible opener against Druid, and you can see going face against the Soul of the Forest board is the way to play around that. Glory needed to have exactly like Innervate plus Pride's Fury or Lightning Bloom plus Arbor Up to trade down that board nicely. And against everything else, I'm pretty sure Hi3 just wins.
Yeah, I think the Hi3 played that very, very well. He at all points had in the back of his mind, of course, the possibility to go for the aggro game plan, pushing damage phase, going for ETC to close things out at the end. Wasn't quite able to get there, which of course means that he only has 1 deck left remaining, which is going to be the Rogue against the Druid to try and get the counter queue. A matchup, again, that we have seen consistently go the way of the Rogue. But, I mean, all knowledge that I have, all lessons that I have learned seem to go out the window when I see Glory on this Druid. He's just unstoppable.
Yeah, I mean, he did have the very clear game plan of when to go in with the Gibberling, and his deck was kind to him, but it does have to be that and a little bit more against Miracle Rogue, because while Rush Warrior starting with the nuts already made it such that Glory needed to have the exact answers, Miracle Rogue has many different ways to put together the nuts opener, right? I find that it can be either Octobot discounted early into the field contact turn, or it can be just Cult Neophytes coming down consecutively, and you have many ways to bounce this card, really milk the value and delete Druid turns. So I think Hi3 has a better chance in this matchup. I'm more worried about how it'll line up against the potential Demon Hunter a bit later.
That might be a bit of a tough one, yeah, if Hi3 does manage to get the win. Again, I still think that it's, I would argue, two favourable matchups left for the Rogue, very slightly. But of course, if you have to win two matchups, even if you are slightly favoured, you are still unfavoured overall to win the series. So it's an uphill struggle for Hi3, make no mistake. But again, he's shown good understanding of the strategies that you have to go for against Druid, when to go for the board clears, when to go for the burn plan, which is very much still a part of Rogue's arsenal here. Oh my goodness. You are looking, oh my goodness. You are looking for the burn later on, but more than that, you are looking for literally exactly this.
Maybe not exactly. Two cards in the middle I like. I think double Octocot is probably overkill. Like, you won't actually discount that many with the second one, right? He would rather look for card draw or just ways to use that discount efficiently. Like, the Vanessa I don't hate, but I think he can do a little bit better than that. Definitely like keeping one Octo and Neophyte though.
Yeah, I guess, you know, I mean, I love the look of double Octobot, but like Octobot reducing Octobot often isn't that relevant, and any card that isn't field contact is potentially lowering your win rate, because that's the one card that can propel this from a good hand to a god tier hand.
What Hi3 thinks, the double discounts can be great if you have some of those high-end cards to discount twice, like Jandis, Kazakus, and then you can get them down super early. I could definitely see that. This hand, I'm not sure if the second discount will be that great, or whether he can even proc the discounts in the first place. But Hi3 is going for the full keep here, and we'll see if that pays off for him. Okay, one prize plunder found. That's a big deal.
It is a big deal. I mean, just the fact that he will very possibly be able to go Neophyte Vanessa for 0 mana, and then, you know, get some card draw, get Thorn Growth Sentries, whatever, off of Glory as well, is a big deal, of course.
Glory holding off on studies on 1 because he wanted to go for Guess the Wait on 2 and possibly bank that mana for a little bit later. Definitely fine. Well, with this keep, he's just meant to play another Octobot, right?
Yes, I mean, Glory kept a card that hasn't been played at this point, so that Nature Studies in hand, I wouldn't be surprised, if Glory has a read on that being Fungal Fortunes as one of the most commonly kept cards. So I really don't hate this play of the going for the Cult Neophyte now. The problem is that it does leave it vulnerable to a Lunar Eclipse where it can't be Shadow Stepped again, and I really think that Glory should just deal with it now before it can be replayed.
Completely agree for Glory's expected plan. Can also still just fit in the Nature Studies. That's
oh yeah.
I do respect the timing of the Neophyte from Hi3, but my problem is it's a card you played that is not getting discounted, and then you still have this other Octobot, and it's like, what is the second Octobot really doing? He's only able to get one more discount because all these cards that aren't Vanessa cost 1 or less.
That's true. That's very, very true.
Well, Hi3 can potentially pick up a Nature Studies for himself. Probably not good enough, though, because he's gonna proc the discount instead right now. But, oh my gosh, it's only 2 mana he's saving here, and the other Octobot, if Glory procs it, is only saving him 1 mana.
Right. To be honest, I kind of expected him to just go Octobot past there, because, yes, you know, you get down the Prize Plunderer, which can just trade against a minion anyway. But I was kind of interested in going Secret Passage, then potentially like proccing both, or like bumping into a 2/2, then going Secret Passage, you know, and getting it done that way. But either way, he does get the passage, does get the discount on all these cards, and these are decent ones to have found, to be fair.
That's quite good. The Tenwu lets him replay the Prize Plunderer. Just any way to get rid of more of these 2/2s is good. Although I guess if you do that, you can't really trade the first half of the Prize Plunderer anyway. So you might be more interested in stepping like the One Thief or even the Octobot again. God, we can't see these choices.
Yeah, that is a little bit annoying, but wow, Cone of Cold is one of the better ones.
For sure.
Come, friend.
Okay, gonna go again on the One Thief. It looks like he's not necessarily interested in Cone of Cold this turn.
Really? Interesting.
Wants to fit in the dagger. It was very difficult to maneuver this turn because the mana made it such that if you Cone of Cold, you're not able to play whatever you Tenwu'd that turn. So Hi3 is saying he's just going to keep this in hand for a little bit later and value the board presence. I don't hate the line that happened post-passage. I'm just more concerned about the timing of the procs on the Octobots because now Hi3's hand is like not the easiest to maneuver.
And now for Glory, sticking 2 minions on board against Rogue is very often about the best you can expect, to be perfectly honest. And so here being able to go for Glowfly, Bloom, Power of the Wild as another huge development that Hi3 is really going to struggle. Despite having the dream starting hand here for Hi3, he's just massively behind now.
I don't think it was the dream starting hand, like 2 out of the 4 for sure, but like to actually pay off on the Octobot discounts, I think you need to aim a bit higher than Vanessa and second Octobot. Okay, we see the field contact now. He can potentially step Octobot and Guardian Og Merchant it to be able to get a strong field contact turn. However, he can't play Cone of Cold by that point.
Yeah, the question is then as well, would you rather go field contact first for an extra draw on the Org Merchant or go Org Merchant first so you have an extra mana but one less card draw? Kind of tough to pass through.
I think it's got to be the mana. Like, he does have Vanessa to keep the train going at the very least. He just needs more shots at Prize Plunder or Foxy into Prize Plunder, things like that. And if it's the plan, he's got to go now.
Yeah.
Not enough time left, so he might end up on just Cone of Cold here. Oh man, there's no time, Hi3! You can't start field contact turns on the rope.
Really?
No one crosses the
Not even on the field contact? Okay. Saving the field contact for later, but man, this turn, even though he cheapens the field contact, he's not doing any. He's not drawing more than he could have last turn if he had stepped the Octobot, I think.
And there it is, just the perfect draw with Soul of the Forest means that this board, as hard as you try, is never getting cleared. And I think for Hi3 with this hand, not able to quite get there yet. And unless there is an absolute miracle, as the name of the deck would suggest, off of the field contact, this is just home free for Glory. He just had the goods.
It does need to be a miracle, doesn't it? I think, like, if we're talking super fringe outs for Hi3, it's gotta be, like, One Thief off of the field contact into, like, devolving missiles, and you step the one, you get another devolving territory. It's just so difficult, because even if he gets all the Prize Plunderers, there's just Soul of the Forest, second layer on this now. Glory thinking, is there any reason to trade? Am I scared of anything? Don't think so.
Yeah, you can just get away with going face. What card do you give them? Soul of the Forest if they step Vanessa? That does nothing.
Nada.
Even just blooms out the hero power. Why not?
Yeah, sure. Even if he top decks Arbor up, he's able to play it. Not that he needs it, because this board is insurmountable from Hi3. Why is Glory so upset? He looks upset.
He demands perfection from himself. Nothing less than perfection from the world champion.
Well.
And yeah, I mean, perfection is a way off. Literally just living is a ways off here for Hi3 because this ain't it.
Again, if he's not starting the contact turn now, it's pretty much just conceding. I contributed my one super low percentage outer, Derek. Do you got anything?
Well, I was thinking if there's any way to get Font into Varden, but there literally isn't even mana for that. Even if like Wand Maker was off or Wand Thief was off the top, you still would not have mana to be able to do that. And that's honestly the best I had.
As good an answer as any. I always talk about Font into Varden as Mage versus Druid, so I think I had that coming.
Yeah, Hi3 pretty noticeably upset, as you would be. It's a miserable way to go out. And it's a big loss for him as... Oh, sorry, apologies. He has survived at 1 health on this turn, so good job on that front. I won't call him out quite yet, but if he were to lose this game, I will say that has huge implications for him. He is right down towards the bottom of the leaderboard. And getting through to the semis is a big deal, of course. He walks away with 3 points, which, given how few he has accrued so far, is massive in terms of bumping him up out of the way. But that 1 more, that 2 more he could have gotten if he'd won the weekend would be worth, again, so much more.
Gotta be a heartbreaker for Hi3 falling at the hurdle. That was just 2 matches away from being able to potentially cement himself away from the relegation slots. Even Jandice for double Earth Elemental does not get there. Jandice for double Raz does not get there. No outs. And in the end, it's even a subpar Jandice to rub the salt in the wound. See the thumbs up from Glory. He's headed to the finals.
He is indeed a place that he is well acquainted with, both in Grandmasters and, of course, in the World Championships, where he became our world champion for the year. Very, very well played overall from Glory. I liked a lot of what I saw from the Druid. Obviously, that was much harder for Hi3 in that game. Glory had, I think, a fairly easy hand to play. You just go for the Glowfly into Glowfly, and you knew exactly what to look for after that. He's clearly extremely well acquainted with this deck. As I've said a couple times, it feels like the closest we've come to that point where you just know the vast majority of hands, the vast majority of situations that you are going to find yourself in Druid, so you can just always play to those. And because of that, Glory is going through to the finals. We could, of course, have a back-to-back victory for the Japanese practice partner group. Possessi taking the win last week, Glory potentially taking the win this